All right, we made it. Opening day of the NBA season. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer, here with Mike Gallagher. A new addition to our content schedule this year, Mike. Every day, 2 o'clock Eastern, hopefully on the dot. I'll work on my production skills, hopefully on the dot. We will be going over the injury report for the day, talking about what the injuries we're looking for are, what possible things can kind of shake up the slate, how these impact the rotations that we're dealing with, and how they impact projections and kind of like what we're thinking on what these injuries are. Now for today, just a 2-game slate, Mike, there's not a ton. So we'll be quick today, but tomorrow on Wednesday, we'll have a ton. So if you want to kind of get prepared for NBA DFS throughout the course of the season, we will be here Monday through Friday, 2 o'clock Eastern, breaking down these injuries and kind of getting you prepared for those if-thens and what-if situations in terms of projections and whatnot. So, Mike, are you ready for the grind that is NBA DFS season?
I just got over a cold, so that worked out great timing. But yeah, feeling pretty good. We're finding out a lot of new injuries already that we didn't know about, like Etuan Moore, Daniel House is questionable. Like, it just comes at you so fast.
Yeah, and so a new addition this year with the injury report. If you check out the NBA's injury report, they used to just update at 1:30 Eastern, 5:30 Eastern, 8:30 Eastern, and 10:30 Eastern. Sorry, during the course of the regular season. This year, they're now updating every hour. Most of those are not going to have any updates because teams are still under the same filing responsibilities as before, which is before 1 o'clock if you do not have a back-to-back, and then after 1 o'clock if you do. So it'll be a situation where you will have kind of those midday reports that leak out, actually probably updated to the injury report. But we scheduled this for 2 o'clock because our assumption was the first injury report of the day would be 1:30. Now there's a couple more kind of going throughout the day. And this content is free on YouTube. If you want to keep it free from us, please make sure to subscribe, like this video, subscribe to our ETR NBA YouTube channel. We're trying to grow this channel and continue to give you guys good free content and information. If you are one of our subscribers and are looking for more DFS specific information in terms of plays and whatnot, Mike and I will be back on the mics at 5:30 to establish the show and go over NBA top plays and kind of our approach to the 2-game slate tonight. This will be just focused on injuries and how we think it impacts rotations and different things, not DFS plays. So if you're looking for DFS plays, you gotta get behind the paywall and get to the subscription over at ETR. We've got in-season package, props packages, everything you can have your eyes out for during this NBA season. So Mike, let's go team by team and start with this Brooklyn-Milwaukee situation. There's one name on the Brooklyn injury report, Mike. Who is that name?
Mr. Kyrie Irving got the old NWT. That's it. It's a biggie, and we kind of know what's up. And Steve Nash has said this is going to be annoying. There's going to be so many situations where they mix and match. We saw this a lot last year when Steve Nash wouldn't want to play, Bruce Brown because there wasn't enough shooting out there. And now we run into that problem again. They have a lot more front court depth. We saw them go big. We saw a lot of Kevin Durant at the 3 in the preseason, which wasn't really a thing. So we got to watch out for that. Combine that with what's going on with the Bucks and their lack of a front court. It's something to talk about. But yeah, definitely expect Bruce Brown to start. I'm expecting Blake Griffin to start and get the Giannis assignment. He handled him pretty well for the most part in the postseason. So it should be a decent amount of Bruce Brown. But maybe we see a little bit of bigger lineups too.
Yeah, and in terms of Kyrie's absence, I think from the Nets' perspective, they have more backcourt depth this year. Healthy James Harden, also adding Patty Mills off the bench, and then Bruce Brown being this like super sub utility knife that can like play all these different positions. And they've got a ton of front court depth. So again, you'll get back to like what we kind of saw in the playoffs a little bit more. Harden, KD, some of the role pieces will pop in and out at different times because they've got a lot of bodies they can play matchups with. But no other concerns for Brooklyn. Their projections, I don't expect to have any changes. We could maybe see a surprise starting lineup or something like that, but I really doubt it, like an Aldridge over Blake or something, but I really, really doubt it. So I think projections on Brooklyn are pretty static right now. I don't see a lot of reason to move anything around. And they're playing Milwaukee. Milwaukee actually has a ton of injuries for a team that didn't play their starters a lot during the preseason. But it's, championship hangover early in the season with some health. Some of these are new guys that are on the team that aren't healthy, and some are holdover injuries from last year.
Yeah, no Dante DiVincenzo from that ankle surgery. Still no Portis for a hamstring injury. Still no Semi Ojeleye as well with a calf injury. So big yikes. Budenholzer had mentioned Giannis Antetokounmpo stepping up the most, so he should get upper teens, maybe mid-teens. We're kind of being conservative. He could get up there, so definitely an option, especially in FanDuel. Talk more about that later. And then we get to find out who the hell Sandro Mamuk Shabash. I don't even know how to say his name.
Sandro. I'm going with Sandro.
Sandro Mamuk.
I'm going with Sandro for a few weeks until I practice more.
He's fun. He's a big body guy. He's probably gonna get minutes, man. But the Nets, they could go smaller and go that route. But expect a little bit of Noir at the 4 to open up minutes for Grayson Allen, who's gonna probably start. It's crazy. The defending champs being so thin so early is crazy.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting spot because you remove Bobby Portis from the rotation, and he is a really integral part of kind of leading the second unit in scoring and creating shot volume and also creating offensive rebounds. So you remove him from the rotation, it opens up all these minutes for Sandro to play kind of like as a backup center for Lopez. Also smaller lineups with Giannis as kind of the center. Nwora, it opens up more minutes for him. He was extremely impressive during the course of the preseason and has been, he's a difficult player to project because when he has played in the past, he's played in situations where the Bucks have rested everybody, so his rates are really, really impressive from what we've seen him play. We haven't seen him integrated with the starters a lot. I don't think he'll be asked to do that tonight. I think it'll be a situation where you'll get like Giannis kind of with the second unit guys, and you'll get Chris and Drew kind of with the starters and stagger Giannis around. But I do think it's a great opportunity for Nwora. I think he is in play on a 2-game slate for sure. I think it's an opportunity for Thanasis and Antetokounmpo as well, as you alluded to. Last year, Thanasis, much like Nwora, both guys were great when everybody was out for the Bucks. It's a little bit of a different situation when they're just stepping into reserve roles that they have more playing time. But it is something that on a 2-game slate, when you're looking for value, these guys are pieces that should be on the floor. We're projecting around 14, 15, 16 minutes, something like that. And on a 2-game slate, if you're playing lots of lineups, they certainly can get into the mix. Semi Ojeleye, not going to be available as well, so that kind of just clears out this front court depth quite a bit. And then the big thing that I would say will impact our projections on Milwaukee that could move things a little bit is just whether Grayson Allen or Pat Connaughton starts. We think it's going to be Grayson Allen. That's kind of been the buzz around camp. He has started the final preseason games. Connaughton has more history with the team, but he also has more history kind of coming off the bench and playing in those lineups with Giannis. So I think both of those guys will be out there a decent bit tonight. But I do think this is one of those games, we talked about this a lot during the course of last year with the Bucks, where, when you get them in competitive environments against other top tier teams, sometimes the stars minutes actually get up into that 35, 36 range. And a lot of other times against non-competitive teams, you see it, falter around 30, 31 because of blowouts. This should be a competitive environment. Also, the front court depth issues, you should see higher minutes from the Bucks starters tonight.
Could add 2 things. Jordan Nwora is really offense first, and Budenholzer has major defensive concerns. So if I'm Budenholzer, I'm trying to sneak him in when KD's out to maybe fill him in there. Just DFS wise, he's a Jordan Nascora. Doesn't really do much besides scoring. So something to think about there. But definitely probably a lot of content regardless.
All right, let's turn our attention to the second game on the slate. A game that I'm super excited to watch. I mean, both you and I have these takes that we think the Warriors are a little bit underrated compared to the Lakers this year and think they're the better team. If you're out there, in the sports betting world of things, I like Golden State money line tonight. I don't think they should be dogs. I think Golden State is better prepared than this version of the Lakers, but we'll see. We'll see what LeBron and AD and Russ have in store. On the injury side for the Warriors, there is a little bit, but I think it's all stuff that was largely expected. Klay Thompson is not going to return until well into the season. Most likely, we're probably thinking closer to like Christmas-ish. James Weissman is still not ready to go. He was not ready to go all of preseason. Not a huge concern there. It does open up more playing time for some of these secondary pieces that the Warriors invested in during the course of the offseason. Nemanja Bjelica, Otto Porter Jr., all these types of guys. Along those lines, Jonathan Kuminga is also ruled out, right knee patellar tendon strain. And then Jeff Doughton, who they just signed to a two-way situation. He's not going to be with the team as the Warriors load up on guards with all their two-way contracts. So in terms of the Warriors, what do you think these injury situations mean for tonight in terms of who gets more opportunities?
And he's not on the report, but Andrew Wiggins may have his minutes in check because Chris said he wasn't in shape. So those high upside Wiggins minutes that we see sometimes, they're not going to happen tonight. But yeah, Poole's going to play a bunch. He's going to be kind of in that CJ McCollum role where he kind of subs out early or Steph subs out early, whatever they do. Bring him back in to run the point. So he's in a really good spot. Bielitsa, they really like him next to Draymond, so he'll be filling in. Certainly Looney should be looking at a lot of minutes and relative to him. And then, mix and match in. Steve Kerr said that for sure Damian Lee will be in the rotation, so expect him to be in the mid-teens, possibly. He could fill it up when he's hot, so something to consider there too.
Yeah, and I would say in terms of minutes projections for the Warriors and where we're at with things, I don't think much can change in terms of the starting lineup. I think things are pretty set there. I would be surprised if we got something other than Steph, Poole, Wiggins, Draymond, and Looney. I would be pretty surprised. That said, Poole and Lee did have kind of similar roles in terms of playing time in the preseason with rotations, and we have a big gap there in terms of playing time, and that's one thing that I am like slightly hesitant on. I think Jordan Poole has earned all of this, but Damian Lee kind of had the same rotations as him in the preseason. Poole is going to be extremely popular across DFS sites tonight, so it's one thing where I love the player, I love the buzz along the player, but I am like just a touch concerned that there's some fragility, and on a 2-game slate, that's a difficult situation to deal with when I really like the player's upside quite a bit. That's the one situation minutes-wise, because there are a lot of wing minutes open for Golden State where I could see like it being a little bit hot-handy between like Damian Lee, even Otto Porter Jr., like any of these guys that can kind of fill it up. I see some scenarios there where the minutes just get a little bit fragile. And then Looney is a guy that in the preseason, in the games against the Lakers started big in those games. And as a result, Looney was on pace for like 26 minutes. He played like 13 to 16 minute halves. And I've only got him at like 24-ish. So I actually think there's a little bit more upside to him. The problem with Looney is he's just such a low fantasy point per minute producer that even with additional upside, it's not particularly compelling.
Yeah. And of course, just as we said the Wiggins thing, Steve Kerr again said that Wiggins will have a minutes cap, and Draymond. So Draymond last preseason, he had COVID. So it took him, he said, months to get into conditioning shape, and he hasn't expressed those concerns. So I wouldn't be too concerned, but no like crazy upside on Draymond. They're going to need him a lot. So I don't like the matchup for Draymond. Anyways, we'll talk about that later. But yeah, keep an eye on that. So again, like I think Poole could like the Wiggins downside just brings Poole up a little bit more for me.
Yeah, I think all those guys. I mean, I think Poole's the guy that everybody's going to play. But I mean, I think taking cracks on Otto Porter and some of those other guys is interesting too. Let's go over to the Lakers side. This is really the one place that there's an injury question mark that I think would shake up the slate pretty meaningfully. Obviously, we know they're without Trevor Ariza, they're without Talen Horton-Tucker, who they're going to be without those two for quite a while. Wayne Ellington has also been ruled out with a hamstring strain that sounds like aging veteran hamstrings. Those can linger, and so that's a lot of wing depth right off the bat for the Lakers. And then you add in Malik Monk is probable. He had a groin strain that kept him out some of preseason, so that was good news. But Kendrick Nunn with an ankle sprain is questionable. And if they are without Kendrick Nunn, they are so thin on the wings and just in reserves generally that you could see a situation where the Lakers play an unusually tight rotation tonight. And I think this is the tricky part about this slate is if Kendrick Nunn plays, I think he's going to play mid to upper 20s minutes, and I think he's going to be a pretty integral part of their rotation. But if he does not, I don't know if Malik Monk is healthy enough to step into all of those minutes. And I don't know how much Carmelo Anthony and Kent Bazemore on the high end can really absorb in terms of minutes. So you get down into some shaky pieces of the roster. Maybe Austin Reeves gets into the rotation. How are you looking at this Kendrick Nunn situation? And do you think he's on the closer to probable side or on the closer to doubtful side of this questionable tag?
So let me go back to the weekend. So just to give you some background on this, when Frank Vogel spoke on I believe Sunday, it sounded to me that Nunn was ahead of Malik. They said, okay, we're going to play Nunn a full practice, see how it goes. So I was thinking probable. Gets a Q tag. So I still think he plays, but I think he may have just not bounced back from that heavy workload that he should have. So I think he plays, just to throw it out there. Monk, I probably expect a cap because he has, groin strains, highly, highly likely to be aggravated. So he'll probably get capped a little bit. Bazemore has to play a decent bit. Someone has to guard Steph. Someone has to guard Jordan Poole. They are barren on wing defenders. So I think Bazemore, won't shoot much. But the playing time, maybe picks up some steal or two. I think he's going to have to play a bunch regardless. But Nunn is playing a lot next to Rondo. He does have some spot minutes next to Westbrook. So he can play kind of a combo guard role.
Yeah, and all these injuries on the wings are also kind of impacting our projections in the front court as well because of the lack of depth for the Lakers. And so one of the things that we were looking at is in the preseason, the Lakers did this thing where they kind of put DeAndre Jordan into that old JaVale McGee role where JaVale McGee would start games and he'd play like 12 to 16 minutes. Dwight Howard would be the backup center, but they'd finish often with, AD at the 5. And so you'd have kind of a 3-way center split. And because they're so thin on the wings, I think it trickles over into probably getting this DeAndre Jordan starting role once again that they did a few times in the preseason. We're projecting him for, limited minutes. I don't think he'll be particularly useful from a fantasy perspective, but it does have a trickle down effect, right? Like they need to eat minutes somewhere because they just don't have enough bodies. And so as a result, you get DeAndre Jordan into some minutes, you get higher, stronger rebounders on the floor next to Anthony Davis and LeBron James, which can impact their upside a little bit. We know AD is, typically a little bit more efficient at the 5 from a fantasy perspective. So there's a ripple effect on these injuries and in these rotations and how things shake out. And if you were to remove Kendrick Nunn, it would only further those challenges. So you might even see DeAndre Jordan get up to like 16 and Dwight Howard up to 18 because they're just 18 to 20 because they're just having to get minutes with NBA players on the floor. I think you could also see similarly, you could see Rondo get up into the high teens in that case if Nunn was out, just as they're trying to insulate them from the lack of depth on the roster. So there's a lot of issues with this Lakers team where I think the current projections could move around quite a bit depending on the health of Kendrick Nunn.
Man, could you put shooters around LeBron? Possible he gets Westbrook, Rondo, a big, all on the court together. It's insane. Yeah. To your point, hey, you got to fill minutes. Where do you want to put him? Put a big out with Looney, pretty easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm with you there. But yeah, I think you pretty much summed it up. Worth adding, Vogel left the door open that Melo starts. We saw Melo start almost more in the dress rehearsals out of necessity. So Vogel wouldn't commit to it. I took it as he liked Melo off the bench, but given the circumstance, I think he's got a decent chance to start, and I think he's got a decent chance to play minutes. Especially, I think the Warriors are going to shoot a ton. How are they going to defend this team, man? The Warriors had the second most threes per game in the preseason ever. And you have Steph Curry, Jordan Poole, gods. I don't know what Steph's 3-pointers prop is tonight, but that's probably a good one to take. He's going to take so many.
Yeah, so I think it'll be an interesting situation for the Lakers. They're the most fragile projection team on this slate, but they also don't have a lot of depth. So it's one of these situations where players that project okay for the Lakers now, you almost can bake in that there's upside beyond what they have currently by either Kendrick Nunn not playing or just by the rotations condensing even further on just the healthier players. And so if you're out there tonight and you're looking around at value and Lakers guys look all right to you from the start, they have a little bit of extra upside to them than normal. Now, it's going to be a tough situation to get shots when you're sharing the floor with AD and Russ and LeBron. They'll stagger those guys to have 2 on the floor at pretty much every time is my guess. But there's minutes there. There's a lot of minutes upside to Carmelo and Bazemore. I could see them getting into the high 20s and it wouldn't surprise me. I think into the 30s would need Nunn to sit, I think, or an in-game injury or something. But I think there's paths there for high 20s. And it's a little bit of a tricky situation to project just because these are guys that normally don't play those kinds of minutes. Bazemore and Carmelo normally are low to mid 20s at this stage in their career.
Yeah, you said it all. But yeah, keep an eye on. Just quick note: AD's usage was way down in the preseason when he played with Westbrook and Bond, way down, 14 something. and like LeBron was still fine. Westbrook was down, so it's messy.
Yeah.
So
Those projections will be fragile.
Yep.
They will be fragile as it sorts out like who keeps their usage and who loses it. We know this happens all the time. We didn't really get a full taste of it in Brooklyn last year because KD and Harden and Durant, KD, Harden, and Kyrie were not all healthy at the same time. But we know this happens. There's only one basketball, and only one person gets to shoot it at the end of the possession. So it'll be really interesting
one person gets
to watch.
To keep it and walk away with it in practice, like Ben Simmons.
Yeah, more on the 76ers and how their injury report shakes out tomorrow. But that'll do it for us for this quick 2-game slate. This will be about the time, 20 to 30 minutes. We'll be cracking through these injury reports each and every day, Monday through Friday here at 2 o'clock Eastern. Again, if you're interested in supporting this content, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, like this video, do everything you can to continue to pump us up, and we will continue to bring you this great free content. Those of you who are subscribing to our products, we're super excited to have you on board. We will see you at 5:30 for Top Plays tonight. But that's it for me and Mike. Appreciate you guys.